Hey everyone, Nancy, good to have you back here again. Hello, Matt, what's up? Good to see you. A lot of familiar faces. The other Matt's in here. I interviewed the other Matt about connected TV. I think that's going live on the podcast pretty soon for a lot of people that are trying to learn it. I know a lot of companies are considering that, typically larger companies, just given the barrier to entry in that channel. But Matt's been doing some awesome work there. Give everyone just one more minute to come through. Got a good set of topics today, one of them being CTV, and some other ones as well. We'll get started in about a minute or two. What's up, Tori? Tracy's back. Love it. The screen's like pretty far from me, so I'm like squinting to try and see if I can read other people's names that I don't recognize their face. Dan's in the building. Cool. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We'll get started. And as other people roll through, they'll be able to get into the flow as well. We're gonna keep the same general format that we've been doing. If you all have feedback on the format, feel free to bring it in. But basically, we'll start. I'll set the table with a couple of core topics that either I'm seeing, some things that have come in from questions that I wanted to expand and talk about, and things like that. And then we'll move into more of just the back and forth Q&A action. And then I have a follow-on podcast on this happening at 1 o'clock my time. So we'll probably end about 5 minutes early so that me and other people can sort of transition into whatever is next in their day. Um, Again, this is an event that I do. I'm doing it as Chris Walker. The event is sponsored by Refine Labs, Paceto, and Hatch. And so feel free, if you want to learn about any of those companies, feel free. And I'm going to continue to share more information that's relevant to some of those businesses and what we're doing as that news comes out. And so let's get it started. I had a couple of notes in here, and I want to make sure I bring them up so I don't miss any points. But I'm sure some people saw a post earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, talking about the main headline was demand creation doesn't exist. And some people in the community have responded to that and made a lot of good arguments toward it. And at the same time that person decided to make the post about demand creation doesn't exist, they also decided to create a bunch of lies about me and my company in hopes of discrediting my point of view around demand creation in order to prop up what I consider their rather ignorant point of view. And so this gives us a great opportunity for me to clarify on both points. So we'll do that right now. The first one is that demand creation doesn't exist. And so what I did, if I can find it, where did that go? What I did before the show, I just spent a little bit of time thinking about how demand is created. Part of the position from this person, and I'm just treating this as a debate at this point. Part of the position on the person was that B2B buyers don't just their demand marketers don't create demand. It doesn't just happen. Like B2B buyers have to see the problem in their business, and then they magically decide that because there's this thing going on in their company that they need FP&A software or they need cybersecurity software or something like that, and that marketers and partners and colleagues and all friends, all that stuff has no impact on whether someone decides they want to buy a category or product or not, which I think is entirely ignorant. And so I went through and made a list. It's not a long list, but it's just going to give some examples about all the things that a B2B buyer does, where at the beginning, before that thing happens, they either didn't know about the product, they didn't understand the problem, they didn't know that a solution existed for it, they didn't know what metric to measure to quantify how big the problem was, they didn't have demand created for the product or the category. And then after that, they would be more likely to take that piece of content and share it with somebody else, which starts an internal buying process, an internal research process. They would be more likely to bring it up in their next meeting, whether that's the marketing meeting, the executive meeting, or something like that. They would be more likely to Slack someone on their team and say, hey, what are we seeing on this metric? I just saw a piece of content that shows the metric looks like this. What do we get in that metric? And after that, they start to take an action, which begins an independent buying process, which in B2B is not instantaneous. When we're talking about demand creation, we're not saying we run an ad and then someone buys something. We're saying we run an ad, we become a trigger, we put something in someone's mind that eventually comes back and subconsciously starts their buying process and educates them along the way over a period of time. So here are some of the things that you could do. Some of them, as a company, you have direct control over them. Other things in the market happen that you do not have direct control over. They are direct or indirect things that influence your buyer to consider or want to buy the category or your actual solution. You saw a post on LinkedIn that talked about some type of problem that they see in the market, and you saw that and you share it with someone. You comment on the post and you actually talk to someone about it, and you start to learn and educate yourself about it. You see an announcement from Gartner about a new software category with their Magic Quadrant, and you go and look at it, and all of a sudden, demand has been created for that software category. And so a lot of people that never thought about it now think about it and now consider it and now have a mental model in how to think about it. You attend a Forrester B2B event, like I'm going to attend the Forrester B2B event in Austin in May. And you see a presentation about a CEO speaking a presentation about how they used a specific software or software category to get a result. And you didn't know about the software category before, and now you do. You listen to a podcast and get hooked on it. Maybe you got hooked on the B2B Revenue Vitals podcast and you've listened to all 446 episodes. And through that, you've learned over time the transition to the lead gen to demand gen. You've learned about self-reported attribution. You've learned a lot of other things. And demand has been created around a problem or problem set or a vision for how things are going. Your PE firm makes a recommendation at a board meeting and says, hey, we saw one of our other companies being successful with this. You should really try it. And you didn't know about it before, and now you do. And I'm only halfway through the list, and you can see here that none of these things involve sitting in a boardroom looking at metrics saying, oh my God, this is the problem that we have. You attend this webinar, and we talk about marketing technology a lot in here. We talk about a lot of go-to-market technology, and all of a sudden you didn't know about it, and now you know about it, and you go talk to someone about it in your company. Or maybe you're a consultant and you go and talk about it with the 10 companies that you consult with, and you have even a broader impact. As simple as you see an ad on LinkedIn. I know many people do this. I see an ad on LinkedIn. I'm not the decision maker, but it seems like something that I want my team to know about it. I take a screenshot or I copy the link or something like that, and I drop it into Slack and I direct it to the person who's going to go and research it and make that decision. If that ad didn't happen, then that person wouldn't and the CEO didn't tell them to do it, then that person wouldn't take action and go to the website and further explore and potentially submit a demo, create intent data for your team to go outbound, and none of that stuff would have happened. You text a friend and say, hey, like CMOs do this a lot, either in a community or in direct text, whether it's to me or a colleague of theirs, and they say, gosh, I'm really struggling with this thing. Do you know, like, have you figured out how to solve it? Have you figured out how to do this? And they think there's something there, but they haven't figured out how to package it. They haven't figured out how to frame the problem. They haven't figured out how to measure it. And they're like continuing that process. And a million trillion other permutations of the things that I just mentioned about how through dark social and other, trackable things as well, how information is distributed to your target customer. And all of a sudden, as they learn something, then they become more interested in buying. And maybe if you did nothing, then they would buy 5 years from now. But if you did those things, maybe they'll buy 6 months from now. Maybe they'll buy 9 months from now. And we are dramatically accelerating the time that people understand our product, understand the problem, understand the category, understand the ROI and the cost, and accelerate that decision-making through creating demand. We'll close there. There's another part of this that I want to explain. So at the same time that this person was saying demand creation doesn't exist, they spent a lot of time making lies about what happened with me and my company. And I'm going to take a clear picture to explain this for everyone on the show, and a clear picture to explain this to everyone who listens to the podcast, and to this person who decided to make up lies about me. Saying that I was removed from Refine Labs is totally inaccurate and absolutely not where it came from. And so let's talk through it. What actually happened. Number one, in my business, it would actually be impossible for me to be removed. I'm the majority shareholder. We've raised no money. We have no board. And so it would actually be impossible for me to be removed. I remain a significant shareholder in Refine Labs and therefore want the company to be incredibly successful, generate a profit, potentially exit to another company or anything like that, like any shareholder would in any business. So one, technically impossible for me to be removed based on the structure of the company and the cap table inside of our company. Number two, this was the plan all along. Employee number 7 at my company knows that when they started in July of 2022, I told them the exact vision. We're going to build the agency and professional services company, and then we're going to use the cash flow and the learnings from the agency and professional services company to build a software company. And we won't need to raise VC or raise money in order to build the software company because we've built the right infrastructure behind it. And I was talking about that in 2020 to many employees. And now, 3 or 4 years later, we are here. Did we get there exactly how I thought? No. Was it like perfect the whole way? No. But that was the plan all along. And so I just want to clarify for all the people who know me that might see that propaganda and think differently about me that that is absolutely not what happened. And I'm actually very like I try not to get upset with people, and I totally understand what this person is trying to do. They're trying to discredit me because they think that because I lead the charge on demand creation, that if they make up stuff about me, it'll make their position more credible or something like that. So I get what they're trying to do. I just don't think that it's the right thing to do. I'm not out here coming at any single person or what happened to them or making up lies because I disagree with them. I debate. I spend time debating. I try to debate on facts and data, not trying to discredit people's character or make up lies about them. And so I just wanted to get that on the table for everyone so everyone knows really where this came from, and people that might have seen that and thought differently about me now know the truth. Okay, now let's get into some real marketing stuff. We did talk about demand creation. I wanted to get that in there. Now let's get into some real stuff, especially some topics that came up in discussion from the audience. So let's do that. So the first one was a question. I'm going to just make sure I don't miss it here. The first one was a question. They call it, it's framed as future predictions, and then the context around it is as paid advertising budgets continue to get scrutinized, what predictions do you have around demand creation strategies will evolve and what companies will use? And so let's just riff on that for a little while. I'll say that while advertising budgets tend to be decreasing because companies are lowering budgets, I do not think that B2B advertising budgets are being scrutinized any differently. I really don't. The measurement, I work with a lot of companies. The measurement around them is typically very flawed. If they really cared about measuring it, they would invest the small amount of money and time to measure it properly, but many don't. And I just don't like, sure, the budgets are going down and budgets are being scrutinized, but inside of that budget, paid advertising remains a massive slice of the pie of the marketing budget. Do I think that companies should change what they're doing? 100%. Do I think that companies like the either or game of like, oh, if you like paid advertising sucks, you should build an organic strategy is not how I think about it. I really think about this as a cohesive system where you have two different ways to be able to create awareness and get people customer success and a variety of things that you can accomplish by using both of these mediums together. I think the core thing that's going to change around it is the flow and the strategy around it. What B2B companies do right now is they make one picture or they make one ebook with two pictures, and then they make it into a display ad, and then they run it like a lead gen form on LinkedIn with no thought to the creative and the only core measurement around what was the cost per lead and how many leads do we get and how scalable is it. And I think the core change, and then they're guessing. They really don't even think about the creative, but they are guessing about whether or not it's going to work or not. In B2C companies, if you look a little bit forward about how B2C companies advertise, and what I will say is there's a clear pattern that I've seen over the past 10 years of studying this, where the things that happen in B2C, just B2B companies do that 5 years later. So like if you just look at what B2B companies are doing now, you can kind of see what B2B companies are going to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years. And so where did I get off track here? When we think about the media, I see basically a combination of organic and paid working together. Companies silo these out, like inside of organizational departments, and the person who runs organic social is different than the person who runs paid, and they typically don't overlap or talk, and there's really no synergy around the two. If you had a very strong organic strategy, like I do and many other companies do, then you could post content from a thought leadership perspective organically on LinkedIn. You could see what the audience responds to that validates that the content is good. And then you could take that content that's been validated with your audience and then go and boost it through a thought leadership ad or repackage it for a brand ad and then run that to your target set of accounts where you validate it organically and then you guarantee distribution to all the companies that really matter to your business through a small paid investment. Um, at a more like at a more high level, I think that companies will just continue to they'll need to think differently about creative as you start to think about demand capture or intent capture different than demand creation. You start to recognize that all the demand creation investments live and die by the content quality and the message quality and things like that. And I think B2B companies just don't invest enough money there for it to really play out and be wholly successful, or at least broadly successful. There are players that are able to have success with it, but in terms of a repeatable thing that a lot of companies have success with, can't say that we've seen that just yet. Moving to connected TV. Connected TV is a hot topic. I want to thank Matt Chanella, part of the Refine Labs team, came on the podcast last Thursday, so that'll be coming out relatively soon, where we did a deep dive on connected TV, all the things that he's seen, some of the things that I'm hearing about. As I consult with CMOs and demand leaders and other people like that, there's a lot of people that are talking about like getting how do we get connected TV into our into our advertising stack more or less, or it's going to be an experiment that we're going to run or something like that. And so the question posed here, there's a lot of buzz around connected TV. At what point should companies consider connected TV as a new channel or experiment? And there's some things in my interview with Matt, we'll go into more detail, but I'll cover it at a high level. There are dynamics around connected TV that make it a potentially it's a much different channel than buying a Google ad. In a Google ad, you type in some text, someone can do it, and then you buy the ad, and then someone shows intent, and they click on it or not. In connected TV, you have to deliver a 15-second video that communicates a succinct message that drives someone to want to take an action. The production requirements are much higher. The content requirements are much higher. The formats are much less flexible in connected TV. We're not building a display ad to run through 6sense or Google Display Network anymore, where we just build a picture and then spend $100,000 behind it. The actual thought into the message and into the actual content quality go way up inside of connected TV. Just like if many B2B companies don't use YouTube because of the exact same thing, that the investment in creative they're just not willing to put in to be able to even put things in that channel. When you're buying an ad, you get a spot, you fill that spot within the requirements of what that advertiser has. It could be a video, a picture, text, words, you have character limits, some combination of them. You bid on the ad and you buy it, and then you're trying to get some type of outcome around it. And so with connected TV specifically, when is the right time to consider this? I think the right time to consider it is when you've been able to test and prove that you can build content for that medium, specifically in YouTube. I see YouTube basically being like, YouTube's very scalable, by the way, but I see it almost being like the starter kit for connected TV. You can do it. It's a much lower cost way. It's a much more accepted channel. Many people know how to buy ads on it. You could use retargeting or other simple flows. And as a prerequisite to a YouTube ad, I think that you should be able to have to deliver a LinkedIn ad that creates demand with strong creative delivered in that, whether that's probably in video content on LinkedIn. So if you think about the evolution, deliver static ads that make an impact on LinkedIn or other social channels, then deliver video content that makes an impact inside of those social channels. Then once you've done that, then create landscape videos for advertisements that have specific formats for YouTube. Then once you've done that, then think about running and scaling it up with connected TV to reach a broader audience within a different medium. And I think those are the logical steps, because it's basically you proving that you can deliver content that works in a channel at the lowest risk places where you already spend money now, and then working up to the quote unquote higher risk or more experimental. I think that also, if you want connected TV to have a prayer of working, that you need to change how you measure the effectiveness of that channel. You can report on CPMs, You can report on like I think assisted conversions or sort of like custom conversions. Matt can validate that, but I think that there's some type of custom conversion mechanism. But that stuff doesn't fly in B2B companies. I'm aware of it. I don't think that it should either. And so, but we've been running connected TV for a specific client, and Matt would talk about this a little bit, that it shows up. I heard about you on TV in self-reported attribution within 7 days. 99% of B2B companies don't put that form on the field. If they ran a connected TV experiment for 90 days, they wouldn't get it in attribution. They would deem it a failure, even though it was probably working, and just cut it and keep going back to the same shit that they do with Google, paid search, and SEO and other things that appease the measurement model inside of their company. Let's see there. I think there was a follow-up part of this. Yeah, I think I covered all that topic on connected TV. So stay tuned for more with Matt. I think that episode is launching hopefully on maybe on Friday, maybe it's the following week because we got Dave Gerhardt slotted in as well as a recorded episode. So stay on tune for that for more details on connected TV. Happy to answer some questions that come up on that right now if people are interested. But for now, I appreciate you all being here. Thanks for your support, and we can get into questions.
All right, let's do it. Travis has a question that he dropped in the chat, so I'll bring him on to ask live.
Yeah, and it's kind of been answered in the chat. But when it comes to video quality, especially for ads, do you recommend using an agency and having high production value, or at least at first, can you get by with some homegrown, a little lower production value just to test things out? What are your thoughts on that?
Production value or the cost of production is not equivalent to the content quality. And you can see that play out with a lot of the best performing stuff on TikTok right now being the lowest production possible iPhone camera to selfie, maybe using a green screen. I don't see those. There's no correlation between how much it costs to make the piece of content and the perceived quality, or what I would look at as the impact to the end consumer. I mean, so I would say definitely, I think that B2B companies need to be able to figure out how to lower the cost of creative and content to a level where they can test like B2C companies. B2C companies build 30 versions of an ad, and they run rapid, multivariate testing across all 30 of those things in a variety of channels, which then help them get down to maybe 0 out of the 30 worked, and then we just cut it, or here are the 3 or 4 that really work. B2B companies run one piece of creative. They don't invest enough in the variation. They don't look at the metrics properly. And so and then they blame it on the channel. Then they say LinkedIn or connected TV or YouTube doesn't work for us when they put a bunch of garbage content in the channel and they didn't get the results they wanted. And so I think B2B companies must figure out how to lower the cost of production, whether that's through doing it in-house, or there's some agencies popping up that do offshoring that become very, very cost efficient. And I think for the larger company, the crazy thing is that most of the stuff is already built. If you think about if you're a 100 million ARR company and you're trying to go into connected TV, you probably have 100 customer stories and testimonials on video. You have so many different ways to explain your product in video. You have a video for every use case and feature that you have. How are you able to, it's just the post-production. It's like, how do I chop that stuff up and make it into a compelling thing to educate my customer that fits in the 15-second or 30-second slot? And so for a bigger company, all that stuff is available. It's just the post-production usually. And so that's generally how I look at it. I don't look at it as whether you use an agency or you do it in-house in terms of the content quality or the content cost. It's really about like, am I making a piece of content that makes an impact for the consumer? And the way that you figure that out is you test a variety of things and you look at which ones perform the best.
So, thanks, Chris.
Thanks for being here.
All right, we've got Maurice queued up next, and he's gonna come on.
Hey, sorry about that. I wanted to just ask a hypothetical question to you. If you had to start everything from the ground up all over again, but you couldn't use LinkedIn, what would be your plan of attack to build demand for marketers?
It would be the exact same strategy that I'm like, and it's weird because I started a new company recently, so I'm kind of like
Yeah.
building from the ground up again. So if you just take LinkedIn out of the equation, it would be live event that goes into a long form podcast that then goes into whatever micro distribution channel that my customers use. If there was no LinkedIn, then that attention would then flow somewhere else, and so you'd figure out where did that attention flow if it's not LinkedIn, and then how do I become the best at distributing the content inside of that channel. But the core, you almost have to break it into content creation and content distribution. I think about this event as content creation. And then when you think about distribution, you have long form distribution, which creates depth. You got the YouTube long form videos. You have podcasts, which are long form, which people typically get into the long form through the short form distribution. Think TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. They see you, they like the content, then somehow they get linked back into the podcast and they get hooked on the long form where they really start to learn, where the short form is really like the highlight reel. You don't cover a lot of the nuances in the short form either. You get a lot of the nuances in the long form. And so if LinkedIn wasn't in play, it would just be looking at where does my target customer spend they're going to be spending their time in somewhere else. Maybe most likely it's a public social network. Maybe it's a private community if I have a niche audience or something like that, and just figuring out through customer research, where is that or where are those places? And then how do I take the great information that I'm building that I know is decent because all of you are still here, right? You haven't logged out. So you start to get the feedback that the information is good just through the process of doing a live event. And you can take that and put that in the specific places where you know your customers are.
Cool.
So if you like are looking for a answer present day about where I would do that, like at this very moment, it would depend on the audience, but it would be either YouTube Shorts or TikTok, I think,
Nice.
from an organic standpoint.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You any follow up to that? Anything I can help with? Anything you're thinking about?
I'm kind of like in a different spot where I'm trying to go to companies that are willing to do different things, and during interview processes, just trying to figure out what our companies going to be willing to do. So just I've kind of looked at like manufacturing companies, different tech companies, currently out of tech company, but just trying to get different ideas and see like where they do have their audience versus other places.
So that when you get a new job, you'll be able to do new things and things that you enjoy. Is that the rationale?
Yeah. Like I've mainly been on the demand gen side, on the paid, and I can kind of tell that it's dying. Not dying per se, but
It's
budgets
changing.
it's changing. Yeah, budgets going down, and like the whole lead gen model is just, so many companies are like, oh, more pipeline. I want to come up with more creative ideas.
Yeah, and just to be clear for everyone in my position, it's not that paid advertising is dying. It's the way that B2B companies use paid advertising that needs to die because it's such a low ROI.
Yeah.
That's really the distinction. Like to be able B2B companies spend 100,000 K plus OTE on an SDR. They'll spend $2 million on trade shows every year on the low end. They'll spend tons of money on sales resources. They invest money in a ton of different places, where just buying the LinkedIn ad for 3 cents to get in front of the CFO that you're targeting is a far more cost-effective way to make an impact to that customer for specific parts of the revenue process. And so it's just about how the channel ends up being used. And again, like, I really feel like I'm being a broken record at this point, but the model cannot change until the way that the advertising is measured changes. I watch companies that try to go out and say, okay, our lead gen model sucks. We're going to take 100K a month, and now we're going to invest it in demand creation on LinkedIn. They don't change the measurement around it. And then all of a sudden, the CFO in 15 days is wondering why our MQL is going down. The change gets shut down, and you go straight back into running MQLs because you didn't set it up to be successful in the first place. And so I hope that B2B advertising continues to get scrutinized in the way that it's being used today. I hope that we evolve in the way that we look at it. B2C companies have tons of success advertising. Amazon was the #1 buyer of Google ads in 1999, 2000, 2001, and built the biggest company in the world. And there's been other examples. The company called Wish built a $4 billion valuation company using purely Facebook ads. Like advertising can work. Advertising can be very cost-effective way to acquire customers. It's just the way that B2B companies do it and the way that they measure it is just so outdated.
I
Cool,
agree.
man. If you're looking for stuff like a role or things like that, feel free to drop it in the chat. There's a ton of people in here that might be able to help you or know about something.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks.
All right, we got another question, kind of two questions from Casper, so I'm going to bring him on live.
Yes, sir. Perfect. Yeah, so I have two questions, and it's related to the paid ads. And yeah, I thought, I guess based on your experience in Refine Labs and all the clients you've been working with. So the first one is the formatting of, like, let's say in creating demand, just overall doing awareness on, say, LinkedIn. So just like your thoughts on, or I guess based on data, the differences between thought leader ads and like just like the normal formats. Because I don't really see a lot, like I've kind of been studying a lot of companies and I don't really see them do thought leader as much. So I'm kind of wondering how that works in. And yeah, and the second thing is in terms of if we look at this as demand creation and demand capturing on paid channels like LinkedIn, and we do demand capture and say we only want to do those ads, which is like results and social proof, and when we can go outbound, what is like the criteria for determining that? Because the thing is, like, if you just use retargeting with just a few layers, you don't really get like someone who's actually in buying mode. They just like visited your website or whatever. So yeah, my question is, like, for the second one is like, when do you determine someone is in like a plus 80% buying mode and you can go outbound and you can start allocating budget into more like social proof results, etc.
Cool. There was a lot in there. Let's like chunk it out, and we'll cover the topics along the way. I took some notes. So thought leadership ads versus brand ads. I think there's some interesting distinctions to talk through. In our early testing, like the cost per result, whether that's on a CPM basis or a like cost per engage basis through thought leadership ads, is significantly more attractive than a brand ad. Part of that could be LinkedIn gaming the pricing, but in order to incentivize people to do it. And part of it could be that just people don't buy that ad format very much, so the bidding is down. And as the bidding goes up, the cost of the ad will go up. I'm not sure. The core difference here is that when you're doing a thought leadership ad, you're really advertising the person, and that perhaps you get some brand impact from it. Perhaps you don't. When you advertise the brand, you're really like you're advertising the company. And I think there's a core distinction in that, and that you should probably think about ways that you can do both. Thought leader ads sound great for thought leadership. But what about when you want to market your product and you want to market other things? Like, sure, maybe you could figure out ways to use the thought leadership format to accomplish those goals. But there are like proven, ways that you could just use the brand ad or the brand ad delivery unit in order to do that. And so I think it's really about the distinction. I think it's about using both, not either or. I think it's about figuring out what the right mix of that is for your company based on your content creation strategy and the data that you're seeing. I think that having additional ad formats just gives us more flexibility as marketers to try new things and figure out what's the best way to get to our customer and to deliver the message we want to deliver.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. I like that. Yeah.
Cool. And then there was kind of like retargeting, but if I sort of like read between the lines, like you're really looking for like, what are the intent signals that we should be looking for so that our sales team starts to go outbound?
Yeah, exactly. And also when we should start doing social proof results, customer success stories, ads.
From an advertising perspective, I haven't looked at it in the way that traditional marketers like would look at it in a funnel or a retargeting flow in a very long time. Probably 2017 when I was advertising. That I think that if we have a customer that a lot of our prospective customers know that had success with our product, why are we going to wait until they get to our website to give them that piece of content? Why wouldn't we go out and give it to all of them? I think that social proof could be just as impactful in demand creation when framed the right way as it could in you know, sales enablement or something like that. And so I don't like the idea of just because they hit our website that we're gonna like not give them this content and we're only gonna give them this content. I just think it's a very narrow, limited perspective, and there's a lot of stuff that we should just serve to all people that we want to see it, regardless of their, you know, last 30 days website behavior. And then on the what are the signals that we should do to deliver outbound, like the actual solution is try a bunch of different signals, track it properly to meeting set, qualified opportunity, close one revenue based on the signal that the sales team uses to take action, collect that data over 3, 6, 9 months, have 1,000,000 data points. If we had 1,000,000 signals, our sales team took 1,000,000 actions. What were the outcomes of those actions? Group them into the buckets of what were the signals, figure out what the highest performing signals were, and then keep doing those things. That's the actual answer. Almost no B2B company collects their data at that granularity to optimize their SDR or outbound motion. They don't even know why their sales team reaches out to people. It's not tracked. And so they're able to chalk it up and say, our SDR did something. We should comp that SDR on that meeting that we got. But when they look and they say, like, how are we going to optimize our outbound motion, or what signals should we use to have our sales team do stuff? They don't have the data to make a real decision on that. So it ends up being someone's opinion or what they've seen before, or what they heard from somebody else or an ABM vendor, where like there is an easy way to track that data, and the amount of volume that runs through that system would give you clear indications of what signals you should use. It's just about prioritizing the data. I mentioned this last week. I just find it fascinating that I think they're like, for people that are maybe listening to this or on this call, they're thinking about starting in like their own agency or something like that. If like one space that I see a bunch of opportunity in is what I would call an outbound optimization agency. Think about a website conversion optimization agency, and then transition that to outbound, measuring the signals, how we reach out, the time, how do we integrate AI into this to make it more consistent and more timely, blah, blah, blah. There's just so much that could happen in that space. I actually think there's a large opportunity there because the data is clear. We shouldn't cut outbound. Outbound is effective. It drives pipeline and revenue. The problem is it's not efficient. It costs too much money to drive that pipeline and revenue. And so it's really an efficiency problem, not an effectiveness problem. So the decision is not should we cut outbound or not. It's how do we make what things do we need to change, or how do we need to optimize and how we invest to make outbound deliver the effectiveness of results at an appropriate cost. If you're just looking for, if you don't want to wait the 3, 6, 9 months to collect the data and you're just looking for some early indicators, I would look at number one, the accounts or the people that have been on your website. Ideally filtered down to pricing page, demo page, watch the demo, things like that. The privacy stuff is unknown right now, but there are some tools that claim to be able to basically know the exact person that was on your website at any time. And so like that, for smaller startups or things that don't have as much red tape, I'm not going to recommend it because I don't understand the legalities of it, but they're out there. People are using them. But I think triggering it off of people that have been on your website that didn't convert, that took a high intent action, whether that's an account, you can only look at it at the account level, or the person. That would be one place I would start. Obviously, declared intent conversions. Hey, I want to talk to your sales team about buying now, in any type of channel, a response to an outbound campaign, a demo request, they attended an event, and you have a checkbox that says have our sales team reach out. Anytime that they declare intent is an obvious follow-up. I think when you think about outbound, you're thinking about what are the assumed signals that we're going to look at. And so I think like account or person level, like website traffic or website data would be a good place, a good and simple place to start.
We had a quick follow-up question in the DMs on that. Could you give some example signals?
You know, target account, tier 1 account was on our pricing page 30 minutes ago. Tier 1 account filled in their email address in our demo form, but never hit submit. You know, tier 1 account signed, 4 people at this account signed up for this webinar, but none of them attended. and then you have more common signals. This person downloaded content through some third-party vendor and they push them into our CRM. This person downloaded our ebook on our website. All of those are signals that, or we made up some, fancy calculation about how we get to an MQL score. And then once that score gets above 75 points, then we feed it to our team and they take action on that. All of those end up being different signals that are the trigger for sales to take action. This happened, then sales does something. So when you think about signals, those are some examples about what I mean.
Awesome. Love that. All right, Travis is back. He's got another question.
Hey, yeah, this is a great topic, and thanks for sharing your experience. And I do a lot of CRM cleanup and see so much bad data and dirty CRMs. How often do you see the same thing, and what do you think is the prevalence of just bad decision making because of bad data?
90% of the time, companies do not have the appropriate data to make, smart data-driven decisions about how to invest and allocate and adjust their strategy. That's my current finding. About 35 companies we've analyzed, I would say 3 or 4 had the appropriate data and the right structure to make really good decisions, and the other 90% don't. I think part of it is the siloed nature of the analytics that companies use. So the marketing team will buy some attribution software, and then that attribution software just sucks out the bad CRM data, adds some stuff to it, and says, okay, here you go, marketing, here's your data. And then the SDRs have a different thing where they have to manage their comp plans. So then it's getting measured in a different way to make sure if they get paid the right way. And then you got that. And you have the sales team that are doing certain things. And all of the analytics are generally siloed. They're competing. So you stack up the marketing and the SDR data and none of it matches up. And a lot of times there's credit being put on both things and it doesn't add up. So then when you look at it, it says, wow, I look at the data and it looks like every single investment that we're making in marketing, in programs, in SDRs, it looks like everything's working. I guess we might as well just keep doing what we're doing. But then when you look at the actual business results, not the attribution data, the business results are flat or declining over the past 6 quarters. And the attribution reports say everything is working. And then you got to wonder, are these the right reports to be looking at if it shows that everything's working and our business is declining? And so I think those are some of the core sort of call outs. Companies have moved, especially on the marketing side, have moved to a influenced revenue model that prioritizes a trackable digital touch point, and the time in which that touch point happened, which I do believe in some cases has some value when used appropriately. But there's just simply the tools do not try to get to a point of what was an impactful touch point. I get that we did something and we could measure it, but there's no real understanding of what the impact of that was. And then in addition to that, how much did we spend to make that impact? So most CRM and attribution data do not involve actual looking at the investments. B2B companies do that with their FP&A team, where they do it in an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. And I talked about it last week. The core realization is that we need to get all of the important data as a go-to-market team in the right structure in the CRM. Not in Looker, not in our marketing attribution tool, not in something like that. We need it right in the CRM, and then all of the other ancillary tools are pushing data in and taking data out, but the source of truth ends up being the Salesforce CRM for go-to-market. I think that's what we need to work toward. You got a follow-up to that? Any thoughts?
No, I mean, I see the same thing. Just so much bad data. A lot of it is just bad integrations and just no idea how the data is going to work together. That's 2 systems. And it just pushes all kinds of stuff. A lot of hands in the cookie jar, like too many people being able to mass import things, and just bad data gets in, and then it just stays there and just really gunks everything up. So yeah, I've been seeing the same thing. I feel like I could almost specialize my business in just data cleanup, and just do just fine. So
totally agree. I think it's another, like I talked about, outbound optimization, like whether you call it RevOps or even get even more narrow, because like right, RevOps can build sales comp plans, and like the term, the function is so broad that I think you could even go more niche and just data governance and data cleanup and things like that, and build a good business around that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Chris.
Cool.
All right. I think we have time for one or two more before your next
Exactly.
podcast.
Perfect.
We'll keep everybody on track here. So this one was actually pre-submitted through the Vault community, but it's a really good topic. So I'm going to read it for you, and I can reread it if you need. All right. They're growing their marketing team, and they're doing 2 centers of excellence. They're creating a center of excellence for demand gen and demand capture. So demand capture is going to have paid search manager, paid social manager who owns retargeting only. Demand creation team will have a demand gen manager, and that role is going to be focused on reaching and educating their ICP TAM on social and dark social communities, for example. So the question is, what do you think is the best way to quantify the demand gen manager's impact every quarter? This person wants to continue to own a pipeline number, and here's what I was thinking for the North Star metrics, but would love your advice. Number 1, direct pipeline trending over time in capture demand attribution report. Number 2, dark social pipeline trending over time in create demand attribution report. And yes, they use self-reported attribution. Do you agree, disagree? Have any advice for leading indicators or North Star metrics or this team structure?
I think the team structure is certainly interesting. It's not something that I've seen all that often. Typically, companies will sort by channel because then the scrutiny around the investment in that channel becomes a lot more clear. I've been advocating that companies think about their investments and how they evaluate those investments in marketing in a different way by segmenting out what is the goal of this specific investment. Is it to create demand, capture intent, convert pipeline, or expand accounts? And then have a different way to look at those investments. So they're kind of on the. I can't weigh in on the organizational structure. I would need a lot more data to do that. But I at least like how they're thinking differently about it and trying new things. I think it's a good direction. When it comes to the metrics around it, I think companies should really think about adopting a pipeline source sort of methodology around their measurement of demand or intent capture, and then the conversion of pipeline, rather than siloing it out just around like what came through our website or things like that. I think that it is incredibly plausible, especially when we think about an integrated go-to-market team. We think about how buyers go all bound and how we have a lot of go-to-market motions running, that evaluating the success of our LinkedIn ads only around what accounts come inbound to our website, I think is an incredibly limited and narrow mindset around the success of those ads. LinkedIn ads drive target accounts onto our website, which then triggers our SDRs to take actions that then get those people into meetings and convert those meetings. The advertising or other demand creation that's organic that we do could influence partners to be more top of mind, so that when they have a deal, they bring us in to co-sell a deal because they know about us more and they know what we can offer. I think there is a set in how go-to-market is evolving with a lot of different motions running. I think having a more broad view specifically around demand creation would be really helpful. And in that case, you would look at demand creation and the effectiveness of demand creation investments, or are we able to accelerate sales velocity? Are we able to lower the cost per pipeline generated or hero dollars? Are we able to improve marketing ROI? I think that's what demand creation is for. And so I think, direct website conversions that come in through self-reported attribution become an incredible indicator, become a directional indicator to say, yeah, like we started running connected TV ads 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden we've had 4 qualified customers come into our website and say they heard about us on connected TV. Sounds like we should keep doing it, huh? Sounds like we should at least keep keep working. We're on to something. Maybe we need to refine the measurement over time. Maybe we need to keep thinking about it, but it's a signal that says, hey, we're on to something, we should keep going. And so that's generally how I'm thinking about it. I'd love to hear what they find out as they do this. I hadn't really thought about looking at it this way yet.
Yeah, agreed. Some of their leading indicators they put were self-reported attribution, right, for high intent offers, declared intent, remarketing audience size, homepage traffic trending for non-paid traffic, and number of impressions for ad channel relative to their accounts in market and out of market.
Yeah, I think you could like debate some of those metrics. Like I'm not sure cost per impression by target accounts is the right metric. It incentivizes you to run the worst, lowest cost inventory, which is typically display ads. And so I think I would question that metric specifically. But other than that, I think they're on the right track. Let's do one
Fair
more.
call
We got
out.
time.
All right, I'm going to bring someone on. Let me did get a question in the chat, and it is about pipeline sources. All right, I'm going to bring you on. I probably pronounced your name wrong, so I'm going to let you pronounce your name. I apologize.
Awesome. It's okay. Hey, Chris. Nice to speak here. It's a little nerve-wracking. I am pretty new to this game, so I'm trying to make sure I understand everything that you post because I really do think it's insightful. But let me go ahead and get to the question.
Let's
I've been
do it.
watching a lot of your content. Some of the things that you mentioned was using more than one funnel. So example, the declared intent funnel, the low intent funnel, the event funnel, etc. And the way I understood those was declared intent would be someone submitting a lead form. Low intent would just be someone commenting on a post, something like that. I guess the way I've been looking at that, I've been seeing it as you've been taking the IDA funnel and just segmenting them into their own specific categories. Am I understanding that correctly? That's what it looks like. I'm wondering if I'm missing something.
It's part of it to segment it down, and the rationale for the first reason of why to do it is that each specific motion that you're using to capture intent and convert it to pipeline have very different sales velocity dynamics purely based on the intent the buyer has based on the action that they enter. And so if you look at your what we call website declared intent, buyers that come and say, hey, I want to talk to sales about buying right now, that end up being qualified, those buyers, you might win 8-12% of those customers from raw lead to close one revenue. They might close in 30% of the time as a different pipeline source. Their ACVs might be a little bit lower than what you'd get through outbound, and you're going to have general dynamics around that specific pipeline source. Then you look at outbound, or you look at events, or you look at lead gen, for instance, and maybe you only win 1% or oftentimes 0.1% of raw lead to customer, which means that the raw lead to customer difference is dramatic, sometimes 80 times different from lead to customer rate between these pipeline sources. And if you don't have the granularity to look at the data in that way and then segment it based on buyer intent, not based on what department, the only reason companies have used departments as a way to scrutinize investments, and it's not a great way to look at the data to make decisions. And so by breaking it down into pipeline sources, you get more clarity of what are the things that buyers do where our sales team takes action and we close those deals. We have high sales productivity. We have high sales velocity. Ideally, we have, acceptable or even better cost of acquisition. And so that's part of what we're doing, is breaking it into pipeline sources and then looking at those as specific go-to-market motions. That's part of what we're doing. And then another thing is thinking about each part of the revenue cycle and the way that we measure and optimize them as independent things. You have demand creation, you have intent capture, you have pipeline conversion, and you have account expansion. And what we just talked about is our pipeline source framework really helps with intent capture. That's what it's really helping you the data is helping you optimize that part of the process, which is like, what should we have just like the question Casper asked, what should we have our sales team take action against? And depending on how you answer that question, you could get the same amount of revenue with 10 reps and 100 reps just because of the differences in efficiency and where you focus. And most people don't look at it that way, so they end up with bloated SDR teams and bloated sales teams, where they're spending too much money. Then you have the pressure that's happening in the economy, and people are saying, yeah, our outbound works, but we're spending way too much money on it. It's kind of like basically, and what they don't realize is they have SDRs, doing things where they win 1 out of 1,000 times, and win being like book a meeting or get a deal. And it's just a lot of wasted effort and a lot of wasted money. So that's the reason to look at pipeline sources specifically.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chris.
Cool. Yeah, keep coming back. The stuff that we talk about, like some of it can be like a little nuanced, and so sometimes asking questions, pointed questions like that, just so you can get the concept clear, can be really helpful. So I would encourage you to, if things aren't coming, feel free to come back or drop a comment on LinkedIn, and we'll continue to, keep you moving in the direction of learning. So, with all that said, everyone, I got to jump on this. This is my 3rd podcast. I have 1 more, so we're doing 4 total events today. So, really appreciate you all being here. Love seeing people come back. Hope it was valuable to you. If there's certain topics and things that you want to hear in the next one, would really appreciate you dropping that in, whether through the question form or letting me know on LinkedIn DM. Would love to make this as valuable as possible to everyone that wants to attend live. The event really is for the live attendees. So appreciate you all being here. Really appreciate your support and the transition that I've made. Appreciate your understanding about some of the things I talked about at the beginning, and how we got to this place. So again, really appreciate you all being here, and we'll see you again next Tuesday, same time. Thanks, everyone.